Okay, boys, Matt Law came out on his podcast and he had a few interesting updates I thought we should definitely cover and get into. So there's a little snippet here, and let's just listen to what was said.
Everything's a dig. It's the defence, it's Liverpool's recruitment, it's this, it's that. Digs about the whole striker thing as well. What are you fighting? Like, what? Why are you trying to pick fights? You're clearly frustrated and angry. I get that because you're trying to force the club to do things. You're trying to get things done. You're trying to get players out the door. Everything's very stressful. Once the transfer window shuts, the really good managers, those stresses and strains are kept under wraps. Hopefully, he gets his head together in terms of his messaging as well, because he needs to. Because we've seen it. We've seen it with Nuno at Forest. We've seen it with Angela. Owners these days just do not stand for it. They don't stand just managers and coaches taking pop after pop after pop at them.
Okay, so what do you think? I can see both sides to the story, to be honest. In one aspect, is it very professional? The head coach, the manager, coming out and publicly going against, the hierarchy of Chelsea. At the end of the day, they are his bosses, right? So, look, in that sense, it's not great. But in my opinion, I fully back Maresca on this. The squad wasn't strengthened, and the positions that were weakened weren't rectified in the window. We spent far too much time looking at wingers, spent 100 million on wingers when we didn't need them. We're okay in that position, to be honest. And where we're really short is goalkeeper and centre back, and we didn't rectify that position. We didn't strengthen it, even though Maresca said he wants a Colwill replacement. The club went against him and overruled that, right? So look, he has the right to be angry. We only have, he was talking about he wanted another striker. Yes, we got the lap, but you see now with the lap's injury, we're toothless. We've got nothing up top. So yes, on paper, our squad is really good. I'm not trying to downplay our squad and say it's weak or anything. It's not a bad squad. The first 11 and some of the players off the bench that is a very good squad. Can we win the Premier League though? Can we win the Champions League with this squad and the strength in depth as well? For me, no. And I think we could have definitely done more to get ahead of our competition as well. And obviously we've just got here as well. So Enzo Maresca has repeatedly highlighted issues with the squad from defence to attack. Everything is always a dig. It is noted the owners are increasingly unwilling to tolerate managers publicly criticising them on a regular basis. For me, I don't want a yes man as well. I don't want someone who's just going to sit there and take it like a Potter would or anyone like that. If you want to be Chelsea manager, you've got to have a bit about you. You've got to have that iron fist. There's a reason Jose Mourinho was so successful and he was a perfect fit for the club, right? We need someone like that managing Chelsea, to be honest. We've got a lot of egos and big names in the squad. It takes a big character to really get a hold of them as well, right? And look, say we have a bad run now and Maresca gets sacked at, say, December time, right? Who's coming in ahead of him? You can't tell me many managers are going to come in and work with the squad that we've got and make us win the Premier League, because that's ultimately the goal. And otherwise, what's the point of having Maresca for a year and a half if we're just going to sack him after he makes some silly comments, criticising the hierarchy? It doesn't make any sense. There's no strategy involved in that. So for me, look, I think everyone's being a bit too reactionary because we're in bad form. So it's quite easy to hate on someone, when they are down, right? No one was saying this after we won the Club World Cup or towards the end of our season when we were in really good form and we were also keeping clean sheets. It's no surprise, since the Colwill ACL injury, we can't keep a clean sheet to save our life, right? It's no surprise. And then Maresca publicly said he wanted a replacement. So, everyone's complaining that we're shipping goals and defensively we look weak. Well, there is a reason for that. Maresca did try to rectify that. He came out into the press, right? And he said, I want a Colwill replacement. And the hierarchy made him, go back on his words and say there's an internal solution, which there isn't really an internal solution, right? We can't replace Colwill with, a Champion is a decent academy player, right? But he's not that left-sided centre-back. He's not that same profile. He's the right-sided one, right? Fofana, but he can't stay fit. You're telling me, it's going to have to be Tosin or Chalobah. These aren't partnerships that are going to go ahead and really compete for the league or go deep in the Champions League. To be brutally honest, it's just not. And you look at the depth, say, Arsenal have got in defence, right? so many quality centre backs. The same with Liverpool in their attack. They've just got so many options. I just feel like Enzo Maresca has every right to say what he's saying, right? I don't think he's going overboard. He's not calling for anyone's head, is he? He was just making a few comments saying, the positions he'd like to have strengthened, they haven't been strengthened, and it is what it is. To be honest, if that's a sackable offence, who do we want as Chelsea manager? Do you just want another Potter type figure, introvert, beta male at the end of the day? To be honest, we need an alpha. We need someone with a bit about them to actually lead the squad. So that's my thoughts anyway. Not a chance Enzo Maresca should be under more pressure than the sporting directors to perform this season. Maresca is shown to have a few flaws already this season, but the squad looks half-built and the heavy investment, that's alarming. And that's exactly the same sentiment I have, to be honest. I saw this and I thought, it's bang on the money, to be fair. Are we saying Enzo's been perfect? Can he be stubborn in games and be a bit, tactically stubborn in that sense? Yes, he definitely can be. Sometimes he doesn't switch it up, or he doesn't change players who are out of form. But you can't look at me and tell me the squad and the areas we were weak in that we strengthened and we really had a good transfer window. You can't tell me we did, because we didn't. When I rated it, I gave it like a 7 out of 10. To be honest, that's quite positive looking back. You could easily give it a 6, 5.5. It wasn't terrible, don't get me wrong. We still brought in some great players, like I think João Pedro, Esteval. These were great signings, but where we're really weak is that goalkeeper position. And I'm not saying we need a Sanchez replacement, but we certainly need someone to push him, because Jorgensen cannot push him. We've seen that already. And we needed a Colwill replacement. And that's just the brutal truth of it, right? Under Chelsea's model, each coach agrees upon signings that they do not have any increased transfer power, and they agree that the coach is what they are given. The collaboration over transfers, over profiles, not names. Chelsea want Maresca to get on with things and feel there was enough in the squad to get consistent results. Now, again, I'm not opposed to this. I don't agree that coaches should say, I want this name, I want that name, and if you don't get me, then I get to sulk, and then I get to, cry about it, and then that's where the drama comes, sort of like a Conte situation, and then he gets fired, right? So for me, I definitely agree with this, but if Maresca's saying, in the meetings, like Colwell's out long term now, he's out for the whole season, I don't care who you bring me, I don't care about any names. I need that profile though. I need a left-footed centre-back, because we don't have that in the squad. We've only got Badiashile, and he can't stay fit. He's injured. Why would we gamble the season on this, right? When we can go out and we can get someone like a Hincapi for 55 million, and we spend that on Gittins like that, we'll happily dish it out on young wingers, exciting talent. But when there's an experienced centre-back who's reached his potential and he's playing at the top of his game, they don't want to go out and spend that money. So, look, I'd understand if Maresca came out and he said, I want this player, I want that player, and the board said, no, we do that. But to be honest, if he's saying, I want this profile, that's up to the scouting and the hierarchy to have a look. And we should have about 5 names in every sort of position and profile. We just should. Otherwise, what are we paying these scouts for? I can do a better job on Football Manager, So I'd hope we have some sort of database where we're really staying on top of them. And if Maresca's saying, find me someone who's similar to Colwill, I don't care who it is. Just go out and get me someone, I don't see anything wrong with that, to be brutally honest, Look, coming out in the press, the press conference tomorrow is going to be super interesting. I'll probably do a video just covering what he says, and then I'll do another video doing the preview for the Brighton games. I'll do a double upload tomorrow probably, because I just think we're going to get some drama in the press conference. Look, huge news surrounding Palmer. Look, he's not been spotted in training, so is that groin injury reoccurring? Does he potentially need surgery? Hopefully we get some kind of, solid updates regarding that. Another player's fitness. And for sure, one of the reporters might ask him, and things might get heated there. So the press conference tomorrow will be really interesting. Obviously, we've got the game, Brighton at home, on Saturday at 3 o'clock. Huge fixture going into that. Do I feel totally confident we win that? No. But, I'll cover that in my preview. And I thought this was interesting as well. So Chelsea defensive woes. Maresca's side have only allowed 5.67 XG against them in the opening 5 games this season, but 3.32 XG coming from set pieces. the common denominator. Whenever we actually have to defend, individual errors occur and compound to easily cost, even if it's low XG. Not signing the centre-back when Colwell got injured has proven to be extremely costly, and it's likely hurt how expansive Maresca is willing to be due to worries of giving the opposite more opportunities to make us actually defend. And again, this goes back to it. You know, I don't care who we bring in, we just need that profile. And perhaps we play Joel Hatto there, but I think the club see him as more of a Cucurella replacement for the future. They see him as that inverted left back. Whether they trust him enough to play at centre back, we'll have to see. But it's looking like the club signed him not with that in mind. So, look, really interesting, to be honest. I think tomorrow's definitely one to watch, but for me, the Maresca out talk is absolute nonsense. We shouldn't entertain it. And if we're poor, for 3 solid months, fair enough. You can make an argument. But for me, no, absolutely not. The club hierarchy have a lot of looking at themselves to do before we put any blame on Maresca. Not to say he's faultless. I'm not saying anyone's faultless. Everyone has our flaws. We're humans, right? But as a coach, what he did for us in that first season, I just don't think we really backed him enough, to be honest. And again, that Colwell replacement that he, publicly said, and the club chose not to do, it's looking like that's why we're shipping goals. And, everyone can see it when we're watching the games. There's a big hole in our defence, especially on set pieces. And with that, you can't blame Maresca. So, let me know what you guys think. Personally, I think that the Maresca out talk is complete waffle. So if we did get a bomber and he is sacked, I'm going to lose my head. Similar to the Tuchel situation. So that's the video for today, boys. We'll cover the press conference tomorrow, match preview out tomorrow as well, and then Saturday, Chelsea Brighton. So I'll see you then, boys. Peace.